If you find yourself overthinking or turning a decision over and over in your mind, even though you know you need to do something, but you just feel stalled, this video is for you. In this video, I will walk you through a guide that I created to help you move from being stuck to taking action. If you'd like to follow along with a PDF version, you can find that in the description below. Before we start, I also want to mention that if you're currently dealing with a crisis situation, please consult some of the resources that I've included in the description below. This guide may not be helpful for you at this time. So this process is divided into 3 parts. The first is to assess the situation. The second is to anchor to your values. And the third is to act with courage. The questions in this guide are based in the principles of cognitive behavioral therapy, and I've used them with dozens of clients, including myself. So let's get started. The first part of the process is to assess the situation, and this part has 4 questions. The first is to clearly identify what is the risk that I'm avoiding. So think about the situation where you feel stalled and like you're stuck in overthinking, and be really specific about exactly what it is that you might be avoiding. Now, if you don't know what it is that you're avoiding, you might need to take a little bit more time to really reflect on what are the questions that you keep turning over in your mind. And that might give you some clues to what it is that you're avoiding. I'm going to use an example of avoiding having a difficult conversation with a partner, one that you know you want to have and that you need to have. So in that situation, the specific risk would be initiating a conversation. The second question is, what is the worst that could happen? And it's really important here to be honest and don't sugarcoat it to yourself. Really take a few minutes and face in your mind what you imagine the worst case scenario could be if you took action in this specific situation. Now, it's really important to be honest with yourself because all of the steps that come after this one relate to figuring out how you would handle this worst case scenario. So if you're not being fully honest with yourself about what you imagine or fear will happen, then the subsequent strategies that we're going to develop may not be as effective. So the first question is, what am I avoiding? The second question is, what's the worst that could happen? The third question is, what are the chances that that worst thing is actually going to happen? So on a scale of 0 to 100%, write down a number that captures the chances that the worst thing is going to happen. Now, for this part, it's important that whatever number you write down isn't just a reflection of the intensity of your anxiety. Your anxiety is probably telling you that the chances are really high, and maybe they are, but I want you to check that against the thinking part of yourself and to really kind of integrate both, okay, what am I feeling, but also based on my experience, what do I know? Based on the situation, what do I know? Maybe think about other ways your anxiety might be overestimating the likelihood that this bad thing is going to happen. And then the fourth and final question, which in some ways is the most important question of part 1, is what could I do to cope with the worst case scenario if it actually happens? And there's 2 parts here I want you to think about. The first is coping behaviors that you could do. So this could be something as simple as meditating or doing some deep breathing. And then the second type of strategy is the people that you could reach out to for support. So identify at least one person who you could call or text. So that's the end of part 1. Let's move on to part 2, which is anchor to your values. There's 2 questions here. The first is, what is my why for taking action in this situation in the first place? And so what I want you to think about is, are there values that you hold dear that are connected to you doing this difficult thing? For instance, if the situation is that there's a difficult conversation that you've been avoiding with your partner, one of your values, or a value that could be relevant to this situation, is a value for intimacy. It might be a value for honesty. Think about your situation and consider what would be meaningful about taking action in this area, even if the outcome isn't exactly what you hope it would be. The second and final question of part 2, anchor to your values, is to consider the opposite. So what would be the costs of not taking any action? And this could be just the opposite of what you stand to gain. So for instance, if initiating a difficult conversation would increase intimacy between you and your partner, a cost of not taking action or a cost of not initiating that conversation might be a decrease in intimacy. Another cost could be a lost opportunity to practice a new skill or develop a new set of skills related to either communication or just working through your anxiety. So once you're done with part 2, part 3 is act with courage. And there's really just one question here, which is, what is one actionable step that you can take in the next 48 hours that moves you towards action? So just to clarify, this action step doesn't necessarily have to be the end goal or the hardest thing that you're facing that you might need to do. It could be a smaller incremental step towards where you eventually want to go. So let me use this example of needing to bring up a difficult conversation. The action step might be something like devoting 10 minutes to journaling what exactly you would say if you were to initiate that conversation. It might be literally what would you say to initiate the conversation, or it could be reflecting or journaling on the things that you would want to bring up. So that's not the same thing as having the conversation, but that could be an action step that gives you more clarity about how or when or even why to initiate the conversation. It may be that after journaling, you discover that maybe this conversation isn't something that's that important to you, and that's perfectly fine too. The goal here is to get unstuck. So usually what keeps us stuck is we're not allowing new information to inform our decision process. So the goal here is to walk yourself through different questions to think about the situation in a way that might bring you some clarity instead of sort of spiraling on the same thoughts. So that's the last step. Make sure that it's something that's different from what you're doing now, but not so big that you're setting yourself up to not take action and then maybe feel badly about it. Remember that the PDF is linked below in the description, and this process can be applied to many different types of situations where you know you need to take action, but you're just kind of stuck in your thoughts and you need to get a little bit of perspective. And so as you practice it, you will get better and better at asking yourself these questions automatically, and it'll become like a new skill. So feel free to adapt the questions to language or terminology that makes the most sense for you or that resonates the most with you. But keep in mind that the goal is to achieve a greater degree of engagement with your thoughts towards action. I hope that you found this helpful. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time.